Ambassador Serena stood at the observation window of the evacuation ship and watched her world die. The planet below, once covered in beautiful blue oceans and green forests, was now burning. Massive fires spread across the continents like wounds that would never heal. Ships filled with refugees flew past her window, escaping into the darkness of space. But she knew that most of them would not survive. The enemy was everywhere. The Velkari had lived in peace for 10,000 years. Her people had joined with 11 other species to form the Galactic Coalition. Together, they had built a civilization based on knowledge, art, and understanding. War was something they read about in old history books. Violence was considered primitive and shameful. They believed that any problem could be solved through conversation and compromise. They were wrong. The Kethra swarm arrived without warning 18 months ago. They came from the dark spaces between galaxies, a species that existed only to consume. They were like insects, but each one was the size of a small vehicle. Their bodies were covered in hard black shells, and they had claws that could cut through metal. But the most terrifying thing about them was their numbers. There were billions of them, perhaps trillions. No one knew for certain because anyone who got close enough to count them died. The Kethra did not want to negotiate. They did not want territory or resources or political power. They simply wanted to eat. They consumed everything: plants, animals, people, even the minerals in the ground. When they finished with the planet, nothing remained but dead rock. Serena remembered the day the first reports came in. A small colony on the edge of Coalition space had gone silent. When a rescue ship arrived, they found nothing. The colony, home to 50,000 people, had simply vanished. At first, the council thought it was a natural disaster or an accident. Then another colony went silent. And another. And another. By the time the coalition understood what they were facing, 5 worlds had already fallen. The coalition tried to fight back, but their military was weak. They had not built warships in 3,000 years. Their weapons were designed for defense, not attack. Their soldiers had never seen real combat. When the coalition fleet met the Kethra for the first time, the battle lasted only 2 hours. The entire fleet was destroyed. 10,000 ships and 2 million crew members were lost in a single afternoon. After that defeat, panic spread through the coalition. Some species tried to run, fleeing to distant corners of the galaxy. The Kethra followed them. Others tried to hide, hoping the swarm would pass them by. The Kethra found them anyway. A few attempted to surrender, offering themselves as food in exchange for the survival of their children. The Kethra took them all. Serena had been a diplomat her entire life. She had solved disputes between species that had hated each other for centuries. She had negotiated treaties that brought lasting peace to entire star systems. But none of her skills mattered now. You could not negotiate with hunger. You could not make peace with a storm. The ship shook violently as another explosion lit up the sky below. The Kethra had reached the capital city. Serena could see the swarm moving across the surface, a black wave that swallowed everything in its path. Somewhere down there, millions of her people were dying. Somewhere down there, her family home was turning to ash. She felt a hand on her shoulder. It was Captain Velkor, the commander of the evacuation ship. His face was tired and gray. He had not slept in days. "Ambassador, we need to leave now. The swarm has broken through the orbital defenses. If we stay any longer, we will not escape." Serena nodded slowly, but did not turn away from the window. "How many did we save?" The captain was quiet for a moment. 47,000. Out of 8 billion. The number hit her like a physical blow. 47,000. That was all that remained of her entire species. 8 billion lives, reduced to a handful of refugees running for their lives. Her parents were gone. Her siblings were gone. Everyone she had ever known was either dead or dying. "The distress beacon," she said quietly. "Is it still transmitting?" "Yes, Ambassador. It has been broadcasting for 6 months, but no one has answered. The other coalition species are too busy trying to save themselves. There is no help coming." Serena finally turned away from the window. Her eyes were dry. She had no more tears left to cry. There must be someone. Some species we have not contacted. Some ally we have forgotten. Captain Velcor shook his head. "We have contacted everyone, Ambassador. Every known species in the galaxy has either fallen to the swarm or is preparing to fall. The coalition is finished. The Kethra cannot be stopped." The ship began to move, pulling away from the dying planet. Through the window, Serena watched her world grow smaller and smaller until it was just another dot of light among the stars. But even from this distance, she could see the fires burning. She walked to the communication console and sat down heavily in the chair. Her fingers moved across the controls, searching through old records and forgotten files. There had to be something. Someone. Any hope at all. Then she found it. It was a file marked with warnings and restrictions. Access was forbidden by order of the High Council. The file was over 300 years old, and it concerned a species that had been deliberately erased from Coalition records. A species that the Council had judged too dangerous to contact. A species that had been locked away in their own solar system, quarantined like a disease. Humanity. SYR, Ina had heard stories about them, whispered like ghost tales. They were a young species, barely a few thousand years old. But in that short time, they had fought more wars than the Coalition had fought in its entire history. They killed each other constantly, endlessly, for reasons that made no sense. Territory, resources, religion, pride. They seemed to enjoy violence the way other species enjoyed music or art. The Council had decided long ago that humanity could never be allowed to join the galactic community. They were too unstable, too aggressive, too dangerous. So they had built a wall around Earth and hoped the humans would destroy themselves. But what if they had not destroyed themselves? What if they were still out there waiting? Serena knew she was about to break the most sacred law of the Coalition. She knew that contacting humanity could bring a new disaster upon the galaxy. But the Kethra were already destroying everything. What more could humanity possibly do? She opened the communication channel and began to compose a message. It was simple and desperate, the last cry of a dying civilization. To the people of Earth, we are the Valkyrie Coalition. We are facing extinction. Please help us. You are our only hope. She sent the message into the void and waited. All hope was lost. But perhaps, just perhaps, there was still one chance remaining. The journey to Earth took 3 weeks. 3 weeks of silence. 3 weeks of waiting. 3 weeks of watching more worlds fall to the Kethra swarm on the emergency broadcasts. By the time Serena's ship reached the edge of human space, the Coalition had lost 2 more homeworlds. The Valkyrie refugees were now scattered across a dozen hiding places, waiting for death to find them. Serena stood on the bridge as the ship approached the quarantine zone. The barrier was supposed to be invisible, a wall of energy that prevented any ship from entering or leaving the human solar system. But when they arrived, they found nothing. The barrier was gone. The quarantine had failed. "Ambassador," said the ship's navigator, his voice filled with confusion. "I am detecting massive energy readings from inside the system. Thousands of them. They appear to be ships. Human ships? I believe so. But these readings do not match anything in our records. These vessels are different." Serena ordered the ship to continue forward. As they crossed into human space, she felt a strange sensation in her chest. It was fear, but also something else. Something like hope, mixed with dread. She was about to meet the most dangerous species in the galaxy. She had no idea what to expect. The first human ship appeared on their sensors an hour later. It was enormous, at least 3 times the size of the largest coalition vessel. Its hull was painted completely black, so dark that it seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Strange symbols covered its surface, images that Serena did not understand. One of them appeared to be a human skull with crossed bones beneath it. A communication signal came through. A human voice, speaking in the common galactic language with a harsh accent. Unidentified vessel. This is the Terran defense ship Iron Will. You have entered restricted space. State your identity and purpose, or you will be destroyed. You have 30 seconds. Serena quickly activated her own communication system. This is Ambassador Serena of the Velkari Coalition. We come in peace. We sent a message to Earth 3 weeks ago. We are requesting help. There was silence for several seconds. Then the human voice returned, slightly softer this time. We received your message, Ambassador. Proceed to the following coordinates. An escort will guide you to Earth. Do not deviate from the assigned path. Do not scan our ships. Do not attempt to contact anyone else. Understood? Understood. 2 smaller human ships appeared and took positions on either side of Serena's vessel. They were sleek and fast, covered in weapons that she could not identify. As they traveled deeper into the human system, more and more ships became visible. There were hundreds of them, then thousands. They filled the space around every planet, every moon, every asteroid. Shipyards orbited the gas giants, producing new vessels at an incredible rate. The Coalition had believed that humanity was primitive, trapped on a single planet, fighting among themselves. They had been completely wrong. Humanity had not only survived the quarantine. They had used the time to build an empire. When they reached Earth, Serena could barely speak. The planet was surrounded by a ring of defense platforms, each one armed with weapons that made Coalition technology look like children's toys. Massive stations floated in orbit, manufacturing facilities and military bases that stretched for kilometers. And everywhere, there were soldiers. Human soldiers, wearing black armor and carrying weapons that hummed with deadly energy. She was taken to a building in a city called Geneva. It was an old structure, built from stone and wood, but surrounded by modern technology. Armed guards stood at every entrance, watching her with cold, suspicious eyes. She was led through long hallways decorated with paintings of human history. Many of the paintings show battles, wars, and conquests. Humans killing other humans. Humans killing aliens. Humans standing triumphant over the bodies of their enemies. Finally, she was brought to a large room where 5 humans sat behind a long table. They wore military uniforms covered in medals and ribbons. Their faces were hard and serious, marked with scars and lines of age. These were not diplomats or politicians. These were warriors. The human in the center spoke first. He was an older man with gray hair and eyes like steel. I am General Marcus Stone, commander of the Terran Expeditionary Force. We have read your message, Ambassador. We know about the Kethra Swarm. We know about the Coalition's defeats. Tell us why we should help you. Serena had prepared a speech, full of appeals to compassion and solidarity, and the common bonds between all intelligent species. But looking at these humans, she realized that such words would mean nothing to them. They did not care about compassion. They did not believe in solidarity. They respected only strength and honesty. Because you are the only ones who can, she said simply. The Coalition has no military. We do not know how to fight. The Kethra have destroyed everything we sent against them. But you, she gestured at the window, at the ships filling the sky outside. You have spent your entire existence preparing for war. You are the only species in the galaxy that knows how to kill on the scale necessary to stop the swarm." The humans looked at each other. Something passed between them, a silent communication that Serena could not understand. Then General Stone smiled. It was not a friendly smile. It was the smile of a predator that had just spotted prey. "The Coalition locked us away for 300 years, he said. "They called us animals, monsters. They said we were too violent to be trusted. And now, when the real monsters come, you want our help." Serena lowered her head. "Yes, I know we have no right to ask. I know we treated your people badly. But billions of lives are at stake. Entire species will go extinct if the swarm is not stopped. I am begging you, General. Help us." The room was silent for a long moment. Then General Stone stood up and walked to the window. He looked out at the fleet of warships orbiting the planet, the greatest military force the galaxy had ever seen. "We have been waiting for this," he said quietly. "For 300 years we have been building, preparing, training. We knew that someday something would come. Something that would threaten all life in the galaxy. Something that would require the kind of violence that only humans can deliver." He turned back to face her. "We did not build this fleet to conquer. We built it to protect. To be the sword that stands against the darkness." He pressed a button on the table, and a holographic map of the galaxy appeared in the air. Red dots marked the worlds that had fallen to the Kethra. Blue dots marked the remaining Coalition territories. The red was spreading like a disease. "The Terran Expeditionary Force will deploy within 72 hours, General Stone announced. 500 warships. 2 million soldiers. We will engage the Kethra swarm and we will destroy them. Every last one of them." Serena felt tears forming in her eyes. "Thank you, General. Thank you." Stone shook his head. "Do not thank us yet, Ambassador. You asked for our help, and you will receive it. But you should understand something first." He leaned forward, his eyes locked on hers. "We are not saviors. We are not heroes. We are killers. The most efficient killers in the history of the universe. And when we are finished with the Kethra, the galaxy will remember why they were so afraid of us in the first place." Serena swallowed hard. She had asked for monsters to fight monsters. Now she would see what that truly meant. The planet Thyra 7 was dying. 3 days ago, the Kethra swarm had arrived in orbit and begun their invasion. 2 million of the insect-like creatures had descended on the surface, consuming everything in their path. The local population, a peaceful species called the Thyrani, had no weapons capable of stopping them. All they could do was run and hide and pray for a miracle dot in orbit. The last Thyrani defense station was burning. Its commander, a young officer named Calvarth, had watched his entire fleet be destroyed in less than an hour. Now he stood alone on his damaged station, surrounded by the bodies of his crew, waiting for death to claim him too. The Kethra ships were approaching, ready to finish what they had started. Then something changed. The space around the station began to twist and bend in ways that should not have been possible. Great tears appeared in reality itself, holes in the fabric of the universe that glowed with terrible light. And from those tears, ships began to emerge. Human ships. Calvat had never seen anything like them. They were massive, angular, covered in weapons that bristled from every surface. Their hulls were painted the deepest black, decorated with symbols of death from 100 human cultures. Skulls and bones, crossed swords, words in human languages that he could not read but somehow understood. Names of battles, names of wars, names of enemies that humanity had defeated throughout their bloody history. 500 ships poured through the rifts in space, taking formation around the dying planet. The largest of them, a battleship that dwarfed even the Kethra hive ships, moved to the center of the formation. On its hull, painted in letters taller than buildings, was its name, Memento Mori, a communication signal cut through the static on Calvada's console. A human voice, calm and cold. "Attention, Kethra forces. This is General Marcus Stone of the Terran Expeditionary Force. You have exactly 60 seconds to withdraw from this system. This is your only warning." The Kethra did not respond with words. They did not understand words. Instead, they did what they always did when they encountered resistance. They attacked. Thousands of Kethra fighters launched from the hive ships, a black cloud of death that had destroyed entire fleets before. They screamed toward the human formation, confident in their numbers, certain that nothing could stand against them. General Stone watched them come from the bridge of the Memento Mori. Ambassador Serena stood beside him, her hands trembling with fear. She had seen the Kethra destroy everything the Coalition had sent against them. She could not imagine how even humanity could stop such a force. "General," she said quietly, "there are so many of them." Stone nodded slowly. "There are. But you need to understand something, Ambassador." He turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that she had never seen before. It was not anger or hatred. It was something colder, something more ancient. It was the look of a species that had spent its entire existence learning how to kill. The Kethra have never fought humans before. They have fought prey. They have fought victims. They have fought species that did not know how to make war. He turned back to the tactical display, watching the swarm approach. They have never fought predators. He pressed a button on his command console. "All ships weapons free. Show them what humanity is made of." What happened next would become legend throughout the galaxy. The human ships opened fire simultaneously, and space itself seemed to catch flame. Weapons that the Coalition had banned millennia ago tore through the Kethra formation. Antimatter warheads detonated in the heart of the swarm, turning thousands of fighters into expanding clouds of plasma. Railguns fired projectiles at a significant fraction of the speed of light, punching through the hardened shells of Kethra, warriors like they were made of paper. But the most terrifying weapons were the ones the humans called Helios lances. Each human battleship carried one, a massive cannon that could focus the energy of a small star into a single beam of destruction. When they fired, columns of pure white light cut across space, vaporizing everything they touched. Hive ships that had withstood the combined firepower of Coalition fleets were destroyed in seconds. The Kethra tried to adapt. They always adapted. They had faced resistance before and overcome it. This was different. The humans did not fight like the Coalition. They did not try to defend or retreat or negotiate. They attacked with a fury that the Kethra could not comprehend. Human fighter pilots flew directly into the swarm, destroying enemy ships with their weapons until their weapons failed, then ramming their own ships into the enemy rather than retreat. Human Marines launched themselves from boarding pods into the sides of Kethra hive ships, cutting their way through corridors filled with the enemy, planting explosives in critical systems, and fighting to the death to ensure the bombs detonated. On the bridge of the Memento Mori, Serena watched the battle unfold with growing horror and awe. She had asked for killers, and killers had answered. "General," she whispered, "your soldiers, they are dying." Stone nodded. "They know. They accept it. Every human soldier understands that death is a price that may need to be paid. We do not ask our enemies to die for their cause. We ask ourselves to die for ours, if necessary." A Kethra hive ship managed to break through the human formation and make a run toward the planet. Before it could reach the atmosphere, 3 human destroyers intercepted it. They were outmatched, outgunned, facing a ship 10 times their size. But they did not hesitate. The lead destroyer, a ship called the Fury of Mars, accelerated to full speed and aimed directly at the hive ship. Its captain, a woman named Commander Yuki Tanaka, had given her crew the option to evacuate. None of them left. They stood at their stations as their ship became a projectile, a weapon made of metal and fire and human determination. The impact tore both ships apart. The hive ship exploded in a ball of flame that could be seen from the planet's surface. The Thyrani below watched in disbelief as their executioners were destroyed by creatures they had never met, who died to save people they had never known. After 4 hours, the battle was over. The Kethra fleet had been annihilated. 47 human ships had been destroyed, and 18,000 human soldiers had died. But every single Kethra in orbit had been killed. Every single one. On the surface, the ground invasion was still ongoing. 2 million Kethra were consuming the planet, and they showed no signs of stopping. The Thyrani had given up hope. Surely, even the humans could not save them now. Then the dropships came, thousands of them, falling from the sky like rain, each one carrying 100 human soldiers in black armor. They hit the ground in the middle of the Kethra swarm and immediately began to fight. Not to defend, not to hold the line, to attack, to push forward, to kill. General Stone watched the ground assault from orbit, tracking the movements of his forces on the tactical display. Ambassador Serena stood beside him, unable to look away. The Kethra on the surface still outnumber your soldiers 10-1, she said. Stone nodded calmly. Yes, they do. Are you not concerned? The general smiled, that cold, predatory smile that Serena was beginning to recognize. Ambassador, I would be concerned if the odds were even. My soldiers might get bored. He turned back to the display. The Kethra do not understand what they are facing. They have conquered 100 worlds. They have devoured 1,000 species. But they have never met humanity. They do not know what it means to fight something that refuses to stop, that refuses to surrender, that would rather die than accept defeat. He watched as a company of human marines pushed forward into a mass of 10,000 Kethra warriors, cutting them down with rifles and grenades, and, when those ran out, with knives and bare hands. They are about to learn. The city of Velmara had been the capital of Thyra 7, home to 3 million Thyrani. Now it was a battlefield. Burning buildings lined the streets. Bodies lay everywhere, both Thyrani and Kethra. The air was thick with smoke and the sounds of gunfire that never seemed to stop. Corporal Maya Chun crouched behind a broken wall, checking her rifle's ammunition. She had started the day with 600 rounds. She was down to her last 40. Around her, what remained of her squad took shelter in the ruins of what had once been a hospital. They had been fighting for 16 hours without rest, without resupply, without hope of reinforcement. Corporal, said Private Williams, a young soldier from Australia who had lied about his age to join the military. Movement on the north side. Looks like another wave incoming. Chun looked over the wall. At least 300 Kethra were advancing down the main street, their black shells gleaming in the firelight, their claws clicking against the pavement. Behind them, she could see thousands more gathering in the distance. The swarm was concentrating on this position because this was where the evacuation point was located. 5,000 Thyrani civilians were hiding in the basement below, waiting for transport ships that might never come. How many do we have left? She asked. 11, Corporal. Plus you. And Sergeant Morrison, Bud. Williams glanced at the corner where the sergeant lay, his legs crushed beneath a fallen beam. He was still breathing, but he would not be fighting again. 12 soldiers against 300 Kethra, with thousands more behind them. The math was simple. They were all going to die. Chun stood up and faced her squad. They were tired, wounded, scared. But not one of them looked ready to give up. Not one of them suggested running. Listen up, she said. Command says the evacuation ships are 2 hours out. That means we hold this position for 2 hours. I'm not going to lie to you. Our chances are not good. But those people down there are counting on us. They have never met us. They do not know our names. But they are depending on us to keep them alive. She loaded her last magazine into her rifle. I did not join the Terran Marines to live forever. I joined because some things are worth dying for. Today, those things are 5,000 innocent people who just want to survive. So we are going to hold this line. We are going to fight until we cannot fight anymore. And we are going to make the Kethra pay for every centimeter of ground they take. The squad nodded. Some of them were crying. Some of them were praying. All of them were ready. The Kethra charged. What followed was 2 hours of the most brutal combat the galaxy had ever seen. The human soldiers fought like demons, using every trick, every tactic, every weapon they had. When their rifles ran out of ammunition, they used their pistols. When their pistols ran empty, they used their knives. When their knives broke, they used pieces of rubble, broken glass. Their bare hands. Ambassador Serena watched from orbit, the images transmitted from drones that circled the battlefield. She could not look away, even though every moment filled her with horror and wonder. She had never imagined that any species could fight like this, could endure so much pain, suffer so many losses, and still refuse to stop. Why do they not retreat? She asked General Stone. They are dying. All of them are dying. Why do they not fall back to a better position? Stone watched the same images, his face unreadable. Because there is no better position. If they retreat, the Kethra will reach the civilians. Every meter they give up means more innocent deaths. So they do not give up any meters. But they will all be killed. Probably. And they know it. But they also know that their deaths will buy time. Enough time, hopefully, for the evacuation ships to arrive. He pointed at the display, where a single human figure could be seen standing in the middle of a street, surrounded by Kethra bodies. Do you see that soldier? That is Corporal Chun. She has been fighting for 18 hours. She has killed over 200 Kethra personally. Half her squad is dead. She has been wounded 3 times. And she is still standing, still fighting, still refusing to quit. Serena stared at the image. The human woman was small, covered in blood and dirt, swaying on her feet from exhaustion. But she held her weapon steady, firing at every Kethra that came near her. Why? Serena whispered. Why does she keep fighting? Stone was quiet for a moment. Because she is human. Because we do not know how to surrender. Because somewhere in our DNA, there's a voice that tells us to keep going, keep fighting, keep surviving, no matter what. It is not logical. It is not rational. It is simply who we are. On the surface, Corporal Chun fired her last round and watched a Kethra warrior fall. Her rifle was empty. Her pistol was empty. She had a knife in her boot, but her hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold it. The Kethra surrounded her, dozens of them, their mandibles clicking with hunger. They could smell her blood, her exhaustion, her fear. They had killed trillions of creatures just like her. She was just another meal dot, but something made them hesitate. Something in her eyes. Something in the way she stood, battered and broken, but still defiant. Something they had never encountered before. She raised her knife and smiled. Come on then, she said. Who wants to be first? The Kethra attacked. Chun moved faster than any of them expected. She ducked under the first set of claws, drove her knife into a soft spot beneath a warrior's shell, twisted, pulled it free. She spun, slashed another across its eyes. A claw caught her arm, tearing through flesh, but she did not scream. She just kept fighting. Another Kethra died. Another. When her knife finally broke, she grabbed a sharp piece of metal from the ground and kept going. When a Kethra knocked her down, she got back up. When another one bit through her shoulder, she used her good arm to crush its head with a rock. 11 Kethra warriors lay dead at her feet before she finally fell. The remaining creatures stood over her broken body, confused. They had never seen anything like this. They had consumed 100 species, and none of them had ever fought back like this. None of them had ever caused them to feel something strange, something cold, something that made them want to stop attacking and run away. For the first time in their existence, the Kethra felt fear. A sound came from the sky. The surviving Kethra looked up to see human transport ships descending through the clouds, surrounded by fighter escorts. Reinforcements had arrived. 5,000 fresh human soldiers hit the ground and immediately began pushing the Kethra back. Behind them, medical teams rushed to collect the wounded. One of them found Corporal Chun lying in a pool of blood, surrounded by enemy bodies. "This one is still alive," the medic shouted. "Barely. Get me an extraction pod now." Across the galaxy, on dozens of worlds, similar scenes played out. Human soldiers fighting against impossible odds. Human ships sacrificing themselves to protect refugee convoys. Human commanders making decisions that would horrify any other species. Trading lives for time, spending blood like currency to purchase the survival of others. And on every world, the same thing happened. The Kethra began to retreat, not because they were beaten, not because they had lost, but because they had finally encountered something they did not understand. A species that did not run. A species that did not surrender. A species that seemed to welcome death, to embrace it, to use it as a weapon. The Hive Queen received reports from across her domain. Her children were dying by the millions. Her swarms were being pushed back. And for the first time in 10,000 years of conquest, she gave an order she had never given before. Retreat. Consolidate. Wait. Something new had entered the universe. Something dangerous. Something that frightened even the devourers of worlds. Humanity had arrived. 11 months. That was how long it took humanity to do what the Galactic Coalition could not do in 10,000 years. 11 months to push the Kethra swarm back across 100 star systems. 11 months to liberate dozens of conquered worlds. 11 months to track the enemy to their homeworld and burn it to ash. Ambassador Serena stood on the bridge of the Memento Mori and watched the final battle unfold. The Kethra homeworld, a massive planet covered in hive structures that stretched to the clouds, was surrounded by the human Black Fleet. Billions of Kethra were down there, the last survivors of a species that had terrorized the galaxy for millennia. General Stone stood beside her, his face showing no emotion as he gave the final order. "All ships, begin bombardment. Leave nothing alive." The Helios lances fired. Dozens of beams of concentrated stellar energy struck the planet's surface simultaneously. Mountains melted. Oceans boiled. The atmosphere caught fire. The hive structures that had taken thousands of years to build were vaporized in seconds. Serena watched in silence. Part of her wanted to look away. Part of her wanted to beg for mercy, even for creatures as terrible as the Kethra. But she did not. She had seen what the swarm had done to her homeworld, to her people, to billions of innocent lives. She had no mercy left. The bombardment continued for 6 hours. When it was finished, the Kethra homeworld was a dead rock, its surface covered in glass and ash. Nothing moved. Nothing breathed. A species that had existed for millions of years had been completely destroyed. General Stone turned away from the window. "It is done," he said quietly. "The Kethra swarm is no more." Across the galaxy, the news spread like wildfire. Species that had been hiding in fear emerged from their shelters. Refugees who had lost everything began to hope again. The Galactic Coalition, broken and scattered, began the slow process of rebuilding dot and everywhere. People spoke of the humans. They called them heroes, saviors, the warriors who had stood against the darkness when no one else could. Statues were built in their honor on 100 worlds. Songs were written about their bravery. Children were named after human soldiers who had died protecting strangers they had never met. But the humans themselves did not celebrate that on the memento mori. A memorial service was held for the soldiers who had died in the war. Over 80,000 names were read aloud, each one a life that had been given in service to others. General Stone stood at the front, his uniform covered in medals that he had never asked for and did not want. Serena attended the ceremony at his invitation. She watched as hardened soldiers wept for their fallen friends. She listened as they told stories of bravery and sacrifice, of moments when ordinary men and women had done extraordinary things. She began to understand that these were not monsters, not killing machines, not the dangerous animals that the Coalition had feared. They were something more complicated, something both beautiful and terrible. After the ceremony, she found General Stone alone in his quarters, staring out a window at the stars. "General," she said softly, "may I speak with you?" He nodded without turning around. "Of course, Ambassador." She stepped forward to stand beside him. "I wanted to thank you for everything, for saving my people, for saving the Coalition, for saving the galaxy." Stone shook his head slowly. "Do not thank me, Ambassador. I did not do this for gratitude. I did not do this for glory." He finally turned to face her, and she saw something in his eyes that surprised her. It was not pride or satisfaction. It was exhaustion. It was sadness. It was the weight of 80,000 deaths pressing down on his shoulders. "I did this because it needed to be done," he continued. "Because the Kethra had to be stopped. Because if humanity did not stop them, no one else would. We did not choose to be warriors. We simply are what we are." Serena was quiet for a moment. "What will you do now? The war is over. The swarm is destroyed. Your soldiers can finally rest." Stone smiled, but there was no joy in it. "Rest? My soldiers do not know how to rest. War is all we have ever known. It is written into our blood, our bones, our very souls. Even now, with the Kethra gone, we are already preparing for the next threat, the next enemy, the next darkness that will rise from the void." He walked to his desk and picked up a small object. It was a photograph, old and faded, showing a young man in an ancient military uniform. "This was my great-great-grandfather," he said. "He fought in a war on Earth over 400 years ago. Before that, his father fought in a different war. And his father before him. And his father before him. All the way back to the beginning of human history, my family has been soldiers, warriors, killers." He set the photograph down gently. "We do not fight because we enjoy it, Ambassador. We fight because the universe is cruel, and something has to stand between the innocent and the darkness. Something has to be willing to do the terrible things that must be done. Something has to carry that burden so that others can live in peace." Serena felt tears forming in her eyes. "That sounds like a very lonely existence, General." Stone nodded. "It is. But it is necessary." He looked back out the window at the millions of stars that filled the sky. Out there, somewhere, another threat is growing. Another species is preparing to conquer. Another war is waiting to begin. And when it comes, humanity will be ready. We always have been. We always will be. But what about peace? Serena asked. What about happiness? What about a life without fighting? Stone was quiet for a long time. When he finally spoke, his voice was soft, almost gentle. Once, a long time ago, We dreamed of such things. We dreamed of a universe where violence was not necessary, where all species could live together in harmony, where soldiers could put down their weapons and never pick them up again. He sighed. But the universe does not care about our dreams. It sends monsters like the Kethra to devour the innocent. It rewards cruelty and punishes kindness. It is a cold, dark, dangerous place that will destroy anything that cannot defend itself. He turned to face her one last time. Humanity has accepted this truth. We do not rage against it. We do not deny it. We simply prepare for it. We become the monsters that can fight other monsters. We become the darkness that can destroy other darkness. We become the thing that the universe fears. Serena nodded slowly, understanding at last. You are the guardians, she said. The watchers in the void. The soldiers who never sleep. Stone smiled. It was a sad smile, but there was something noble in it too. Something ancient and proud. We are humanity, he said. And we will be here, standing in the doorway when the next threat comes. Because that is who we are. That is why we exist. Not to build paradise, but to make sure paradise remains possible. He looked back at the stars, at the infinite darkness that surrounded them, at all the dangers that were waiting to be born. And God help whatever comes next. The war was over. The Kethra were destroyed. The galaxy was saved, but on the bridge of the Memento Mori, surrounded by the bodies of his fallen soldiers and the ghosts of all the battles yet to come, General Marcus Stone kept watch over the universe, because somewhere out there, in the darkness between the stars, something was stirring, and humanity would be ready.